The air in the subterranean parking garage of the Obsidian Tower always felt unnaturally pressurized, heavy with the scent of hot concrete and expensive tires. For Elias Vance, Spot B14 was a sanctuary, a small assigned piece of order in his meticulously controlled life. And now, the sleek, black and silver enclosure mounted on the pillar, his brand-new, top-of-the-line EV charger, represented the culmination of 6 months of architectural review board meetings, costly permit applications, and a $12,000 investment. It was his. He was running late. The quarterly financial review for his firm, Titan Analytics, was in an hour, and he needed his car, the deep midnight blue Polestar, charged to at least 80% for the drive downtown. He rounded the corner of the ramp, his footsteps echoing in the silence, his mind already churning through risk matrices. Then he stopped. Spot B14 was occupied, not by his Polestar, but by a gleaming white Tesla Model X, practically filling the space with its aggressive gull-wing doors folded in. But that wasn't the shock. The shock was the thick, high-voltage charging cable. The very cable he had wrestled out of the box himself and installed with proprietary hardware was now snaking from the charger on his pillar directly into the Tesla's port. The charger screen, which should have been dark and waiting for his specific RFID key fob, was glowing a smug, steady emerald green. Elias felt a cold, immediate spike of adrenaline mixed with pure disbelief. Theft in the Obsidian was unheard of, not just because of the security, but because of the price of admission. The residents here had their own unspoken code of ownership. He glanced at the placard above the space, B14. Assigned to Elias Vance, Unit 1902. Clear, undeniable, legally binding, just as the hot, metallic taste of anger began to flood his mouth. The Tesla's door hissed open. A woman unfolded herself from the driver's seat. She was late 30s, clad in athleisure wear that probably cost more than Elias's monthly car payment, her face a carefully sculpted mask of self-assurance. This was Sterling Rhodes, who had bought the penthouse 2 floors below him just 3 weeks ago. Sterling saw Elias and didn't even bother to feign surprise. She gave him a small, patronizing smile, the kind reserved for waiters and door staff. "Oh, Elias." "Morning," she said, her voice smooth, slightly husky, and utterly devoid of apology. She didn't look at the charger. She looked past him as if he were an annoying smudge on the concrete. Elias walked slowly toward the charger, his gaze fixed on the green glowing status light. "Sterling, that's my charger, and my space," she sighed dramatically, pulling out an organic energy bar from a bag. "Yes, I know it's your space. But the charger is different, isn't it? It's attached to the common infrastructure of the building. And since I pay the highest HOA fees, I figure that means it belongs to me just as much as it belongs to you, when you're not using it." She took a bite, chewing with irritating focus. Elias felt his jaw tighten. He had spent his career analyzing loopholes and contractual weaknesses, but he'd never encountered such naked, aggressive entitlement. "That's a remarkable interpretation of property law. Did you actually read the documents? The charger, the installation, and the dedicated circuit are deeded extensions of my unit. It's physically located on a common element, yes, but it is private property. Like the expensive smart fridge you probably installed in your kitchen. If you want to charge, you buy your own unit, and you go through the 6 months of paperwork I did." Sterling wiped a stray crumb from her chin. 6 months? Oh dear. That sounds exhausting. See, that's where you and I differ, Elias. I don't believe in bureaucratic gatekeeping. This is a communal resource. We are all neighbors. If the plug is open, it's open season. Besides, she gestured airily toward the cable connecting her car to his power, "I'm only topping off. You won't even notice it." "I notice it because it's mine," Elias stated, his voice dropping in temperature. "I notice it because you drove your car into my assigned space without permission and appropriated my personal utility without consent. You are stealing electricity from my meter." "Stealing?" Sterling laughed, a theatrical, disbelieving sound that echoed off the damp concrete walls. "It's a trickle, Elias. $5 worth of juice, maybe?" "Don't be so petty. You know, for a man who runs a big finance company, you're very territorial about a glorified power strip. Elias stepped closer, reaching for the charger handle. Disconnect your vehicle. Now. Sterling dropped her energy bar wrapper on the ground, making no move to pick it up. Her smile hardened. No, I'm at 40%. I need to hit 80 to make my meeting in Malibu. You can wait. Or better yet, you can use one of the 2 shared level 1 outlets near the bike rack. That's what they're there for, right? Common charging. The arrogance was a physical blow. She wasn't just using the charger. She was asserting dominance over his routine, his property, and his intelligence. Elias knew in that moment that this wasn't about the electricity. This was a battle of wills, and if he conceded even an inch, she would own that corner of the garage forever. He took a deep breath, consciously slowing his heart rate. I will give you 30 seconds to pull that cable out and move your vehicle out of B14. If you fail to do so, I will be calling security to have your vehicle towed and the building management to issue you a formal notice of trespass and property damage. I will also be disconnecting the main circuit to this unit at the breaker panel and installing permanent, tamper-proof access control. You will not charge here again, and every attempt you make will be logged as a violation. Are we clear? Sterling finally met his eyes, her own going cold. The entitled mask slipped, replaced by something genuinely hostile. Go ahead, Elias, call the HOA. They know who pays their salary. You think I don't know how to play the condo game? I'll have your precious little box designated a public nuisance faster than you can say amps. Try to touch my car, try to mess with that plug, and I'll have you cited for vandalism. My meeting is in an hour and a half. I will be here until I'm charged. You go find your level 1 outlet. She got back into the Tesla, the gull-wing door sweeping down with a dismissive hydraulic sigh. She locked the doors and picked up her phone, pointedly ignoring Elias. Elias stood there, motionless, the green light on his stolen charger burning into his retina. He didn't call security. He didn't want a temporary fix, a fleeting victory that would leave Sterling smirking at him next week. He needed a final solution. He needed a lesson so profound, so personal, that it would redraw the boundaries of ownership permanently. He pulled out his phone, bypassing the HOA management, and dialed a number marked Vance Systems Priority. The connection was instant. Ramon. It's Elias. I need you to dispatch a team immediately to the Obsidian Tower. B14, bring the C2 control unit, the industrial lockbox, and the custom circuit breaker assembly. I need a hardline access control installation completed and coded within the next 2 hours, before my meeting ends. And Ramon? Elias paused, his eyes still locked on the serene, charging Tesla. I want a feature enabled on the C2 unit, a specific proprietary setting. Make sure the kill switch is remote accessible and the lesson is memorable. Elias turned his back on the charging Model X, his Polestar still patiently waiting 3 spaces down. He was going to take the level 1 charger for the day. He could afford the inconvenience. But Sterling Rhodes, he realized with a chilling sense of focus, could not afford the lesson she was about to learn about private property and escalating conflict. He smiled faintly, the first genuine smile since he walked into the garage. The game had changed. He wasn't playing by the HOA rules anymore. He was playing by the laws of physics and consequence. He headed toward the elevator, the heavy metallic thud of a tool case being dropped near his pillar, Ramon's advance team already sounding behind him. Sterling remained oblivious inside her white car, staring at her phone, enjoying her free charge. She had no idea the power she was drawing was about to be weaponized against her. The meter wasn't the only thing running now. The clock on her self-imposed deadline was, too. Elias sat in the soundproofed conference room on the 45th floor, the quarterly review for Titan Analytics unfolding across the holographic projection table. The numbers were astronomical, the risk matrices precise, and the atmosphere, as always, was one of high-stakes, controlled aggression. He was discussing the integration of a complex new asset management system, his voice calm, his focus razor-sharp. But beneath the veneer of corporate mastery, a parallel, darker operation was underway. His phone, resting face down on the table, vibrated once, a unique pattern he had coded for Ramon. The signal meant, installation complete. C2 control unit active. Remote access live. Elias didn't pause his presentation. He didn't even shift his weight. He simply nodded slightly, acknowledging a subtle point his chief investment officer had just made, then slipped his hand under the table. His thumb traced the interface of a custom-built aluminum fob, the remote kill switch and control interface for the C2 system. Down in the subterranean vault of the garage, Spot B-14 had undergone a transformation. Ramon's two-man crew, operating with the practiced efficiency of a Black Ops team, had finished 5 minutes ahead of schedule. They had installed a heavy, steel-gray lockbox around the external circuit breaker for Elias's unit, securing it with an electronic key code known only to Elias and Ramon. More critically, they had integrated the C2 control unit, a sophisticated piece of proprietary hardware designed to manage industrial-grade power flow, directly into the charger's main logic board. This unit didn't just regulate power. It analyzed and communicated using the same high-speed protocols as the Tesla. Sterling, in the luxurious cocoon of her Model X, felt the vibration first. It was subtle, a strange, resonant hum that ran through the steering wheel. She glanced at the charging screen on her center console. It read charging at 61%, just as it had 3 minutes ago. She frowned. She should be closer to 63% by now. Must be a temporary dip in the building grid, she thought. Returning to the social media feed she was scrolling, she felt a moment of smug satisfaction thinking about Elias Vance, huffing and puffing over his $12,000 glorified power strip. His threatened calls to the HOA were worthless. She had already cultivated the head of the board, an aging real estate magnate who valued her fees and her social connections more than Elias's petty complaints. She was untouchable here. Then the digital readout changed, charging at 60%. Sterling scoffed. Load management, seriously? This building is a joke. She waited, expecting the percentage to jump back up. Instead, the charging icon on her dashboard, the small stylized battery, started blinking with erratic, unsettling patterns. The power indicator that should have shown a steady input flow now flickered rapidly, like a dying neon sign, charging at 59%. A low-priority alert message popped up on the Tesla's huge screen. Error, unstable power source. Protocol handshake failure. Sterling felt a prickle of unease. Okay, that's weird. She pulled up the vehicle diagnostics. The car's internal system was showing a frantic, seesawing power draw. 48 kW3, kW 12 kW0 kWA. It was like the charger was aggressively stuttering. She checked the time. Her meeting started in 45 minutes. She needed to leave now to make it down the coast to Malibu. She had planned for an 80% charge. She was now at 58%. She leaned forward and stared out at the black and silver charger on the pillar. Its light, which had been a confident emerald green, was now pulsing an anxious, sickly yellow. Elias, 45 floors up, watched the digital schematic on his fob. The C2 unit's internal logs were streaming data. Protocol reversal initiated. Discharge mode engaged. Target vehicle authentication lock. He tapped the button marked Sequence 2, the corner of his mouth curving into a thin, merciless smile. Sterling watched in genuine horror as her battery indicator plunged 57%, 56%, 54%. The car wasn't charging anymore. The car was losing power, rapidly. The initial error message vanished, replaced by a stark red warning that filled the entire console screen. Critical power drain. Security lockdown initiated. She threw the door open, scrambling out of the car. Her expensive sneakers hit the concrete and she rushed to the pillar. The charger, Elias's charger, was now completely dark, the screen blank. The only visible feature, a new intimidating addition. A thick, custom-machined aluminum plate bolted over the cable access point. The plate had 2 heavy-duty industrial-grade locks, securing the charger's head in place. The cable, her car's lifeline, was now permanently tethered to the charger. She grabbed the charger handle, trying to pull it from the Tesla's port. It was locked. Hard. The vehicle's security system had engaged the port lock, believing the rapid, chaotic discharge was a high-level theft attempt. No, she muttered, fumbling with her phone. She needed to override the car's lock. She opened the Tesla app. The phone screen was instantly covered by a system notification: vehicle tethered, external power source lockout, disengagement protocol active. What the hell was disengagement protocol? She glanced back at her car screen. 38%. In less than a minute, she had lost nearly 20% of her battery. She understood instantly. Elias hadn't just cut the power. He had used his proprietary charger, a system designed to manage high-output bidirectional power, to force a controlled, massive energy drain, exploiting a vulnerability in the car's standard charging protocol. And now the car was reacting to the malicious power drain by locking the cable in place for safety, trapping itself. The entitlement vanished, replaced by sheer clawing panic. Her meeting, a $50 million investment pitch, was dependent on her timely arrival. She couldn't call a rideshare. She needed the perception of power and speed her Model X provided. Sterling ran to the passenger door of the Tesla, yanked it open, and rummaged furiously for her briefcase. She pulled out a small, specialized emergency tool, a manual release lever for the charge port. She jammed it into the release slot near the port, pulling it hard. The charge port refused to budge. The C2 system Ramon had insured was not just draining power. It was generating a subtle, high-frequency electromagnetic field around the charging plug's physical retention mechanism, overriding the car's manual release. It was a digital chokehold. Frantic, Sterling pulled out her phone and called Elias. It went straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a polite message. "Elias, you bastard! You turn this off right now! My car is broken, you hear me? I'm going to call the police. I'm calling the board. I'm calling a lawyer. You have 10 minutes to unlock this, or I swear to God I will personally sue you for every dime you have." She hung up, shaking, and checked the screen again. 31%. The discharge rate had slowed, but it hadn't stopped. Elias, still in his meeting, listened to the voicemail on his smartwatch discreetly. His expression remained passive, focused on the ROI projections on the projection table. He then activated Sequence 3 on his fob. Down in B14, the C2 unit executed the final damming command. The power drain ceased entirely. The car's screen went from flashing red to a stable but utterly desolate number. The penthouse of Unit 1702, Sterling Rhodes's domain, was not a home. It was a command center. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular, indifferent view of the sprawling cityscape, but Sterling wasn't looking at the horizon. She was staring at a 6-screen trading desk, her face pale, the entitled mask shattered by the cold fury of professional ruin. She had missed the Malibu meeting. The $50 million investment pitch had gone ahead without her, handled poorly by her junior partner. The deal was postponed, hanging by a thread. He targeted my mobility. "My punctuality, my leverage," Sterling hissed, pacing the plush wool rug while two men, her chief counsel, Martin and her private security analyst, Kai, listened in tense silence. He didn't just disable the car. He sent a digital memo. He used my own need for power against me. "This is not a dispute over utility costs, Martin. This is a hostile takeover attempt of my peace of mind." Martin, a man whose tailored suit looked perpetually uncomfortable, cleared his throat. "We can initiate legal action immediately, Sterling. Unauthorized interference with private property, potential vandalism, battery damage." No civil suit yet," Sterling cut him off, spinning to face them. "That's tedious, expensive, and slow. Elias Vance is a financial analyst. He speaks the language of asymmetric warfare. He hit me where I was going. I hit him where he lives. Find a pressure point on Titan Analytics. Use the leverage I gave the HOA president. Dig up a spurious regulatory filing, leak an unfounded rumor about their core assets. I don't care. I want his stock to hiccup. I want him to spend today putting out fires, not enjoying his petty little victory." Within the hour, the first shot was fired. Not in the garage, but in the digital canyon of the stock market. A fractional targeted short sell order, executed by a shadow account linked to Sterling's offshore holdings, was placed against a small, specific asset managed by Titan. It was followed by a strategic, anonymously sourced tweet alleging a compliance issue related to that asset. The effect was immediate. The asset value dropped 2.5%, and the ripple caused Titan's own stock to twitch. It was a warning shot, a mosquito bite designed to land on Elias's jugular. 45 floors above, Elias was reviewing the transaction logs of the C2 unit with Ramon via a secure video link on his private terminal. The tether is holding, Elias. It's not just the Model X's security lock. The C2 is maintaining a microcurrent magnetic field to secure the physical retention clips inside the charge port. Nobody's getting that plug out without a certified plasma cutter, and that's a building code violation the HOA will actually care about. Ramon grinned, looking pleased with his engineering marvel. "Good," Elias said, his gaze drifting to the real-time stock ticker showing the minor turbulence hitting Titan. Sterling just showed her hand. "She's trading on the margins of my reputation. Ramon, trace that short sell. I want a complete profile of the initial source in my inbox in 30 minutes. But that's a distraction. Her core asset is still trapped." Elias stood up, pulling on his jacket. "She needs that car out of B14 before tomorrow's garbage collection schedule. She needs to show the building she's not weak. She will try a physical breach next. She'll send muscle. I'm going down to the garage. You stand by for remote verification. Physical breach?" Ramon sounded worried. "You need security, Elias. That's a highly aggressive move." "No," Elias said, walking toward the private elevator. "I need a witness, and I need a camera rolling. I've already contacted my own lawyer. I have the signed assignment and installation documents for B14, the C2 system's proprietary intellectual property certification, and a court-ordered notice of claim filed 10 minutes ago, placing a temporary lien on her vehicle for demonstrable damage and ongoing trespass. She wants to play the legal game? We play with documents and witnesses." Down in B14, the tension was suffocating. Sterling's security analyst, Kai, stood next to the pristine white Tesla. With him were two imposing figures from a private, non-union towing and asset retrieval service, armed with cutting tools and a heavy-duty, reinforced lock-breaking kit. The legal team is still navigating the initial HOA paperwork, but we can't wait for a judge, Kai said into his comms unit. "We're removing the non-factory lockbox Elias installed, and then we're using the retrieval kit to manually override the port lock. Get ready for the immediate tow. The car goes to a secure private garage." Suddenly, the silence was broken by the quiet, measured sound of footsteps. Elias rounded the corner, impeccably dressed, a leather-bound folio tucked under his arm. "Gentlemen," Elias said, his voice calm, echoing slightly, "you're trespassing, and you're about to commit a felony." Kai stepped forward, blocking Elias. "We are authorized by the owner of this vehicle, Ms. Rhodes, to retrieve her property. You have illegally detained an asset using non-approved dangerous modifications to a common utility structure. Step aside." "Non-approved, perhaps, by the HOA president Sterling bought," Elias corrected smoothly, "but legally approved by the city engineering and electrical board documents, which I have here, along with the registered deed to this specific circuit and unit." He opened his folio and presented a professionally mounted document. "What I have here is a court-ordered notice. It states that due to ongoing trespass and property damage, specifically, the forcing of my private circuit's authentication system, a temporary, immediately executable custodial lien has been placed on this vehicle." Kai laughed, a hollow, skeptical sound. "A lien? Over a charging space? That's absurd. A temporary injunction at best." "It's effective immediately," Elias confirmed, his eyes steady. "And that vehicle," he pointed to the Tesla, now a static, 25% charge monument of hubris, is now under the technical custody of Titan Analytics until all claims for damage and unauthorized use are settled. Furthermore, any attempt to break that lock is a direct act of vandalism against a legally detained asset, and I have 5 cameras documenting this. Ramon, confirm live stream to my legal counsel." A tiny red LED on the C2 lockbox blinked twice. Confirmation, Kai's face went stiff. He signaled the tow crew. "We're proceeding. This lock is not court-ordered. Break it." The largest tow operator stepped up, positioning a heavy-duty industrial bolt cutter against the custom steel lockbox. The cutters closed with a heavy, grinding CRR crunch. The metal groaned but didn't give. Ramon's hardware was military-grade, designed to resist exactly this kind of brute force. The operator pulled back, shaking his hands. "This isn't standard steel. We need the torch." Just as the operator turned to retrieve the plasma torch, Elias leaned close to the Tesla's locked charge port and tapped his fob 3 times. The C2 unit performed its final pre-programmed task. The Tesla's internal speakers, which had been silent, suddenly crackled to life, broadcasting a single synthesized voice, startling everyone in the empty garage. Attention! Critical battery fault detected. Due to repeated, non-voltage compliant interface events, the vehicle's primary power control module is now entering permanent decommissioning mode. Contact Elias Vance, Unit 1902. For custodial release. Estimated repair cost, $28,000. Initiating shutdown sequence. The car's interior lights dimmed to black. The 25% charge indicator vanished entirely. The Model X was now a $150,000 2-ton paperweight, completely inert, still physically tethered to Elias's immovable charger. Elias had anticipated the physical break and countered. By bricking the car's central power unit, a non-violent but devastating technical act that moved the conflict from trespass to catastrophic property damage, a cost that legally now rested entirely on Sterling. Elias looked at the stunned tow crew and the pale security analyst. The lien is on a piece of property that is now inoperable, indefinitely. You can try to tow it, but you will be towing a disabled liability that is legally detained to my property. I suggest you contact Ms. Rhodes and explain the full electrifying cost of $5 of stolen juice. The inert white Tesla in Spot B14 was no longer a car. It was a $150,000 monument to Sterling Rhodes's failure, permanently attached to Elias Vance's impenetrable military-grade charging station. The situation, a grotesque parody of luxury living, had gone viral within the exclusive channels of the Obsidian Tower's residents. Photos of the charge lockdown were circulating, accompanied by whispered theories of the quiet, ruthless financial analyst in 1902. Sterling's humiliation was public, visible and utterly immobile. In response, Sterling shifted her attack from brute force to bureaucratic siege. The regulatory complaint she filed against Elias was a masterstroke of political maneuvering. She didn't just allege trespass. She accused Elias of installing a non-standard, high-amperage, unregulated industrial control unit, C2, into the common electrical infrastructure, labeling it a catastrophic fire and safety hazard. This was the attack Elias had anticipated. An assault on his reputation was manageable, but a regulatory inquiry threatened to put the entire garage's power grid under the microscope. She's not just suing me, she's forcing the city's building code enforcement and the fire marshal to inspect the entire Tier 2 electrical manifold, Elias told his lead attorney, Marcus, over a secured line. It's a textbook nuclear option. Elias, Marcus replied grimly. It grounds the building. It shuts down all new construction, freezes valuations, and will cost every resident millions in liability. It's exactly the kind of leverage she lost when she missed her Malibu deal. You need to pull that tether and let the car go. No. The car stays, Elias insisted, staring out at the city from his office. Ramon's detailed report on Sterling's fractional short sell was confirming Elias's suspicion. The short wasn't just spite. It was an attempt to force a loss of confidence in a Titan-managed municipal bond, a move designed to attract SEC attention. She was using financial fraud to enforce a parking space claim. Ramon, focus on the C2 unit, Elias commanded his chief technician. Sterling is forcing an inspection. That 6 months of permit work wasn't just for show. I had to custom-build the C2 unit to manage the harmonic distortion from the aging power trunk line in that corner of the garage. If the inspectors find that, the building isn't just going into regulatory freeze. The whole foundation has a problem. The high-stakes conflict had now become a public safety issue for the entire $4 billion structure. 2 days later, the inspector arrived. Mr. Tanaka, a stern, methodical man from the city's electrical safety board, stood in Spot B14, flanked by the Obsidian Tower's chief engineer, Robert, and a furious Sterling who watched with manic anticipation. Elias was there too, armed with schematics and a calmness that bordered on arrogance. Mr. Vance, Tanaka stated, his pen poised over a clipboard. We have an explicit complaint that this device, designated C2 in the vehicle's diagnostic logs, is an unauthorized and potentially destructive interface. Ms. Rhodes claims it was used to intentionally damage her property and presents a fire risk. The C2 unit is not a modification. It's a necessary mitigation device, Elias corrected, tapping the custom lockbox. The city permit, which I have here, mandated a dedicated, regulated power conditioner for this line due to pre-existing voltage flux on the common carrier in this segment. It ensures the charger complies with safety codes, Mr. Tanaka, by preventing surges. Ms. Rhodes bypassed the C2's proprietary authentication firewall to illegally draw power, forcing the C2 to engage its primary safety protocol, immediate circuit isolation and asset lockdown. She triggered the safety feature, Sterling scoffed. A safety feature that bricks a $150,000 car? That's extortion, not safety. Elias turned to Robert, the building engineer. Mr. Robert, you approved the initial power mapping for my installation. Did you disclose to all residents that the B-wing line installed during the tower's initial phase struggles with high-frequency noise and voltage instability? Robert shifted nervously, avoiding Sterling's gaze. It's a known degradation issue. We scheduled a full overhaul for next year. Elias pressed his advantage. The C2 unit, Mr. Tanaka, logged over 47 critical voltage spikes in the 6 hours Ms. Rhodes was illegally connected, attempting to charge a high-draw vehicle on a line that was only conditionally approved for my regulated unit. If I had simply cut the power, that surge could have caused a cascade failure in the adjacent spaces, including the main elevator control system 1 pillar over. Tanaka, a seasoned veteran of building code disputes, was not buying the theatrics but was deeply concerned by the mention of the elevator control system. He stepped toward the main wall panel and, using his key, accessed the common electrical schematic. I need to trace this back to the main transfer switch. If there's an instability issue, it needs to be documented immediately, Tanaka declared. Sterling realized her mistake too late. Her complaint had forced an inspection not just of Elias's charger, but of the entire highly sensitive electrical architecture that the HOA, and particularly the president she was leveraging, had been actively concealing from residents. She watched, her stomach churning, as Mr. Tanaka and Robert moved toward the elevator shaft pillar. Just then, Sterling's phone rang. It was her lawyer, Martin, his voice strained. Sterling, the SEC just froze the assets on your offshore trading account. The short sell against Titan's municipal bond. Ramon Vance has provided a detailed analysis, proving that the timing and structure of the transaction, executed immediately following your failed tow attempt, constitutes market manipulation tied to a domestic dispute. They're calling it an act of retaliation against a publicly traded entity. Elias countersued with a federal filing. He's playing three-dimensional chess, Sterling. Your financial leverage is gone. Sterling, absorbing the news of her federal financial ruin, could only stare at the garage pillar. She had thought her wealth made her immune, but Elias had weaponized the very system she relied on: property law, electrical engineering, and financial compliance. Then, from the pillar near the elevator came a sound that froze everyone, a high-pitched, resonant hum that quickly escalated into a screech, followed by the terrifying acrid smell of ozone and burning plastic. Robert, the chief engineer, yelled, "The trunk line! It's overcurrenting! Get back!" Mr. Tanaka recoiled, his face pale. He looked at Elias's dark, inert, lock-boxed charger. That thing was protecting the system. Elias walked slowly toward the immobilized Tesla, which was now casting a long shadow in the flickering emergency lighting that had just kicked on. He looked directly at Sterling, who was standing there, financially broken and facing potential regulatory catastrophe for the entire building. "You wanted common property, Sterling?" Elias's voice was low, cutting through the rising tension. "You got it. Your complaint just forced the exposure of a critical infrastructure fault that affects every resident in this building, including your penthouse. You didn't just steal $5 of power. You endangered every elevator, every security system, and every insurance policy in this tower. The ripple effect is yours." The garage lights died completely, plunging the basement into absolute darkness, save for the blinking red of the emergency exit signs and the synthesized voice of the now inert Model X echoing one final time through the blackness.